On the outskirts of Bozeman, Montana, a black man named Ethan Morales believed he had found his peaceful dream among the grasslands and mountains. But just weeks later, everything collapsed when the Homeowners Association erected steel fences, locked the gates, and cut off water to his cattle. From that moment, a tense battle erupted between the lone black farmer and the powerful HOA machine, exposing a calculated scheme to seize his land. Can Ethan turn the tide, reclaim justice, and protect his Montana dream? Ethan Morales had left the crowded city, believing that in Montana he would finally find a true home. After years of hard work, he purchased an old ranch on the outskirts of Bozeman, where open fields stretched endlessly and a small stream wound its way across the land, an essential lifeline for the herd he was building. Ethan believed this place would give him peace, a fresh start, and most importantly, the chance to create the legacy he had always dreamed of. In those early days, every effort felt worthwhile. His cattle were healthy, the labor was grueling but full of promise, and each morning he woke to the vast open space, convinced he had made the right choice. But just a few weeks later, that dream was violently shattered. One chilly March morning, Ethan stepped onto his porch with a steaming cup of coffee in hand. He froze at the sight before him, a brand new steel fence stretching across the only road that led to the main highway. At its center was a locked iron gate, and high above it hung a cold sign, "Access Controlled, Silver Valley Estates, HOA." Ethan walked closer, his chest heavy. He tugged at the gate, but it was useless. The massive lock gleamed back at him, a symbol of power that wasn't his. His cattle were now cut off, and the stream that once nourished them was on the other side of that gate. Before he could collect himself, a polished SUV rolled to a stop nearby. Out stepped a woman with an air of arrogance, her sharp gaze hidden behind dark sunglasses. It was Clara Whitfield, president of the Silver Valley Estates HOA, infamous for her iron will and ambition. Without pleasantries, Clara declared that Ethan's fencing did not meet the aesthetic standards of the community. To be recognized as a valid member, she insisted, he would need to replace it entirely or remain blocked from access. Ethan fought to stay calm, explaining that this was a working ranch, not a resort. But Clara cut him off, turned on her heel, and left him with a chilling warning: comply or face worse consequences. Ethan stood motionless by the iron gate, fury and despair colliding in his chest. He knew this wasn't just about losing a road, it was an attack on the very roots of his dream and his future. And in that moment, the battle to reclaim his right to live and thrive on Montana soil had begun. The next day, Ethan decided to attend the regular meeting of the Silver Valley Estates HOA. He knew that if he wanted to confront Clara Whitfield, it couldn't just be an outburst of emotion. He needed to challenge her directly in the very stronghold where she held power. The small hall sat in the middle of the community, chairs lined up in rows, the air stifling. Residents sat quietly, eyes cast downward, as if resigned to the idea that one commanding voice would dictate everything. At the long table up front, Clara sat in the center, dressed in a navy suit, her face polished, her eyes radiating confidence. Beside her were other board members, but it was obvious that only she had the final say. When Ethan's name was called, Clara didn't wait for him to speak. She launched into a barrage of criticism. She declared that his wooden fence violated the HOA's aesthetic standards, insisting that Silver Valley Estates strived for a community that was uniform, upscale, and cohesive. Ethan took a deep breath, set the folder of documents he had prepared on the table, and spoke firmly. "I walked down this very street and saw at least 3 homes with fences that don't match. They're not locked out. They don't have warning signs. Why am I the only one being treated this way?" The hall stirred. Some residents whispered to one another, while others stole glances at Clara before quickly lowering their heads. Clara's lips tightened, a flicker of irritation flashing in her eyes before she regained her composure. "Those cases are being addressed. Yours is the most blatant violation. Rules are rules, and you must comply." Ethan stepped forward, his voice steady and unyielding. "This is a working ranch, not a luxury retreat. My fence is meant to keep cattle safe. It serves a purpose. It's not for show." His resolute words drew the room's attention. For the first time, people witnessed someone stand toe-to-toe with Clara. After the meeting, a few neighbors quietly approached Ethan, shaking his hand, whispering encouragement, and then slipping away quickly, afraid of being seen. Ethan realized he wasn't completely alone. At least some quietly agreed with him. Still, Clara had no intention of backing down. Just 2 days later, Ethan received his first notice, a violation fine, $50 per day until his fence was brought into compliance. The paper, stamped with a bold red seal, felt like a direct threat. Ethan tore it to shreds and tossed it into the trash, but he couldn't tear away the truth. The battle had begun. That evening, his old friend Harold Bennett stopped by. Harold, a former truck driver who had lived in the area for over 20 years, sat with Ethan on the porch and spoke slowly. "Clara doesn't just run the HOA. She's got family in the County Planning Commission. Anyone who goes against her gets buried in red tape. Some tried to sue, but they gave up, couldn't handle the pressure." Ethan clenched his fists, his eyes burning with resolve. "I didn't leave my whole life behind in the city to come here and live under her nonsense rules. I'm not here to play her game." Harold nodded, his tone grave. "If you're taking this path, be ready. This isn't just about a fence. It's about who gets to decide how you live your life." Later that night, Ethan went out to check on his herd. His flashlight swept across the new steel barrier, the metal glinting cold in the dark. Suddenly, he noticed a small surveillance camera mounted above the gate. The HOA hadn't just locked him out, they wanted to watch his every move. Ethan froze, then quietly pulled out his phone and began recording for evidence. The icy wind whipped across the open fields, carrying with it the suffocating weight of a struggle that had yet to be named. The next morning, another envelope appeared in his mailbox, this time a fine of $100 per day for diminishing community aesthetics. Ethan read the words aloud, laughing bitterly. Aesthetics? This is a ranch, not some luxury resort. Behind the laugh, though, rage was building. He knew that if Clara kept pressing, it wouldn't be long before his Montana dream was crushed under the heel of unchecked authority. In the days that followed, Ethan no longer spoke out publicly. Instead, he chose silence. But it was the silence of observation, of preparation. He gathered every notice, stored the footage of the camera, and documented each detail. Clara thought she had him cornered, but Ethan was biding his time, waiting for the right moment to strike back. This battle may have started with a padlock, but he knew it would never end with just a fence. In the days that followed, Ethan's life in Montana was anything but the peaceful dream he had once envisioned. Every morning, when he opened his mailbox, another envelope stamped with the Silver Valley Estates HOA logo awaited him. At first, the fines were small, $50 per day. Then they climbed to $100, $200, each letter filled with increasingly threatening words. If you fail to comply, the board will pursue legal action. If you continue to resist, your access to community amenities will be revoked. Reading those lines, Ethan felt a lump in his throat. The only amenity he needed wasn't the pool or the tennis courts, it was the right to lead his cattle to the stream for water. But that, of course, was exactly what Clara Whitfield was determined to choke off. Ethan began to notice fractures in the community. Neighbors who once greeted him warmly now grew distant. Some would only nod politely and hurry past, as if Clara's watchful eyes might be tracking them from afar. Yet there were still a few brave enough to whisper their support. One evening, while Ethan was securing a stack of hay in the barn, Rachel Donovan, who lived at the far end of the road, quietly approached him. Her voice trembled, her eyes darting nervously as though someone might be watching. "Mr. Morales, I know they're targeting you. I've been through it. Last year, they forced me to cut down the apple tree I'd nurtured for 15 years just because it wasn't on their approved list. I fought back, and they fined me until I had to sell part of my land just to pay it off. I don't want that to happen to you." Then Rachel handed him a stack of printed emails she had stumbled upon by chance. Ethan's pulse quickened as he flipped through the pages. Cold, calculated words stared back at him. Clara and several board members were openly discussing plans to convert the entire area into a luxury resort. To make it happen, they needed current landowners to sell out, and Ethan's ranch was a key piece standing in their way. Each sentence cut like a knife, revealing that this was never about aesthetics, it was a deliberate scheme. Word spread quickly. Neighbors who had remained silent began to reveal their stance. At night, Ethan noticed makeshift banners hanging from windows across the road. "Let the ranch live." They didn't dare confront Clara outright, but their quiet defiance spoke volumes. Meanwhile, Clara's loyalists fought back just as fiercely. Flags emblazoned with "Community First" fluttered on porches, a bold declaration of allegiance. The entire neighborhood was now split down the middle, with Ethan squarely in the center of the fault line. The tension erupted at the next community meeting, held at Bozeman's Town Hall. By early evening, the place was packed. The air buzzed with unease, whispers and speculation filling the room. When Clara arrived, she carried herself with the same icy confidence, heels clicking sharply, eyes sweeping the crowd as if she still controlled it all. Ethan entered after her, saying little, but carrying two things: the thick file of fines and Rachel's incriminating emails. The meeting began with trivial matters, house paint colors, pool hours, before Clara shifted to what she called the serious issue: Ethan's ranch. Her voice was like steel. "Mr. Morales continues to defy our regulations, refuses to comply with fence standards, and degrades the appearance of our community. This cannot be tolerated." At once, Ethan rose. The scrape of his chair echoed in the hushed hall. He strode to the podium, laid the emails on the table, and spoke firmly. "If we're talking about degrading appearances, the ugliest truth is right here. This is Mrs. Whitfield's plan, her board's plan, to turn our land into a luxury resort. To get there, they force us to sell cheap. Those who resist get their gates locked, their pockets drained with fines, their names dragged through the mud." The hall exploded. Whispers became shouts. Cries of "That's not true" and "Lies" clashed with voices of support. Clara flushed red, struggling to stay composed, but the room was spiraling beyond her control. Some residents stood up, backing Ethan, recounting how the HOA had harassed them too. Others yelled that Ethan was fabricating excuses to dodge the rules. The debate erupted into chaos. Chairs knocked over. Someone lunged for the papers in Ethan's hands. Sheriff Collins and local deputies stormed in, booming commands. "Everyone calm down. This is a community meeting, not a battleground." Amid the turmoil, Ethan stood tall, scanning the divided crowd. The truth was undeniable. The neighborhood had split in two, those quietly yearning for someone to stand against tyranny, and those clinging fiercely to Clara's grip on power. And Ethan, whether he wanted it or not, had become the banner for the underdog. As he stepped out of the hall, the noise of conflict still echoing behind him, he knew the fight was no longer just between him and Clara. It had become a battle for the soul of the community, a line in the sand, and everyone would have to choose a side. After the chaotic town hall meeting, Ethan returned to his ranch with a heavy heart. He knew the conflict had already gone far beyond fines and arguments. Clara Whitfield no longer bothered to hide her ambition. She was ready to turn everything into an open war. Yet in the midst of that pressure, Ethan glimpsed a faint ray of hope. One morning, while driving along the outer road, he spotted a small wooden sign staked into the ground beside the very gate that had locked him out. "For sale, contact Gallatin County Realty." Ethan slammed on the brakes, staring at the narrow strip of land. It wasn't large, just enough to hold the gate and the road that connected to the highway. But its value was immeasurable. Whoever owned this sliver of property would control the steel gate that had trapped his dream. His pulse pounded. This was his chance to flip the board. But he also knew if Clara caught wind of it, she would do everything in her power to interfere, even wield her political connections to snatch it away. This move would have to be executed quietly, leaving no trace. That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, a county land survey map spread before him under the yellow glow of the lamp. His old friend Harold Bennett peered over and asked, "What are you scheming?" Ethan's voice was low but firm. "If I own this land, Clara loses her leverage, but she can't know it's me." Harold furrowed his brow, then nodded slowly. "Then you'll need a shadow to cover your tracks." That evening, Ethan sat at the kitchen table, a county land survey map spread before him under the yellow glow of the lamp. His old friend Harold Bennett peered over and asked, "What are you scheming?" Ethan's voice was low but firm. "If I own this land, Clara loses her leverage, but she can't know it's me." Harold furrowed his brow, then nodded slowly. "Then you'll need a shadow to cover your tracks." The next morning, Ethan called Brett Langston, an old college friend now running a small real estate firm in a neighboring county. When Brett heard the plan, he chuckled. "Sounds like a modern-day cowboy flick, but I like it. I'll set up an LLC under my name and buy it for you. Clara can dig all she wants. She won't find you." Relief washed over Ethan. For the first time in weeks, he felt hope stir. Meanwhile, Clara seemed to sense a shift. She began appearing near the gate more often, flanked by two other board members, whispering among themselves as they watched. Each time, Ethan forced himself to look calm, going about his chores, feeding cattle, mending fences. But inside, he was on edge, aware that a single misstep could ruin everything. A few days later, Brett called with news. The realtor had accepted their offer, and the process would start as soon as the deposit was down. Ethan drove to meet him at a small cafe in Livingston. Amid the clatter of cups and low chatter, Brett slid a folder across the table and whispered, "This is just the beginning. You need to keep it airtight. If Clara finds out, she could sway the seller or even drag in the county." Ethan nodded, carefully signing the papers that carried no trace of his name. In the days that followed, Ethan lived as if on a minefield. Every unfamiliar car creeping by set his nerves on edge. At night, he sometimes heard noises near the gate, beams of flashlight cutting through the trees. He gripped his phone tight, recording everything in case someone tried to sabotage him. Then the call came. Brett's voice brimmed with excitement. "Good news! The owner agreed. No questions asked. We're closing." Ethan collapsed into his chair, the weight lifting from his shoulders. He closed his eyes, imagining the moment he would finally turn the key in that lock. If this step worked, the entire game would change. A week later, in Brett's modest office, the closing was swift. After the last signature, Brett reached into his pocket and pulled out a silver key on a leather fob. He placed it before Ethan, eyes gleaming. "Congratulations! You just bought the gate that's been caging you all this time." Ethan grabbed it, his hand trembling with emotion. He knew he had scored a major victory, though the war was far from over. That afternoon, Ethan drove back to the ranch and stopped at the familiar steel gate. He drew a deep breath and slid the key into the lock. The click rang out like a bell, unlocking not just the road, but an entirely new chapter in his fight. Slowly, the heavy gate swung open. His cattle wandered toward the stream, hooves crunching the earth, mingling with the sound of wind sweeping across the plains, a song of freedom. Ethan stood still, eyes burning with conviction. He knew he was halfway there, but he also knew that once Clara discovered what had happened, the real storm was only just beginning. Just 2 days after Ethan had unlocked the gate for his cattle to reach the stream, a familiar white SUV pulled up. Clara Whitfield stepped out, heels striking the gravel, flanked by 2 HOA board members, her gaze sharp as steel. Standing before them, Ethan held the key still warm in his hand. Clara wasted no time. "Mr. Morales, you have trespassed on property under HOA management. You have no right to open this gate." Ethan stood firm, voice steady. "This gate no longer belongs to the HOA. I purchased this parcel of land. The county records can prove it." One of Clara's companions hesitated, but she quickly cut in. "We'll see about that. Don't think this is over." That same day, Ethan received 3 emails from the HOA office, demanding proof of ownership and threatening legal action. He forwarded everything to his attorney, Thomas Greer, who replied simply, "Let them make the first move. We have the evidence." Still, Ethan knew the fight had already outgrown paperwork. Clara would escalate this into a full-blown public battle. News spread quickly across Bozeman. A local paper ran the headline, "Rancher Clashes with HOA Over Steel Gate." On social media, photos of Ethan standing at the gate went viral, sparking polarized debates. Some hailed him as the man brave enough to stand against tyranny, while others condemned him as selfish, unwilling to respect community rules. Public opinion roared, and Clara seized on it. She held a small press conference, declaring Ethan a danger to the community and a threat to the model town the HOA had worked so hard to build. Ethan remained silent, tending to his herd, but he understood that silence would eventually let Clara control the narrative. His chance came with the town's summer festival, the year's biggest event, where neighbors gathered to eat, sing, and celebrate under the Montana sky. Harold urged him, "If you want people to see the truth, this is the moment." Ethan nodded, gathering his documents, the secret camera footage, and Rachel Donovan's incriminating emails. That afternoon, the town green overflowed with the scent of barbecue, country music drifting through the air, children laughing as they darted across the grass. But when Ethan stepped onto the small stage beside the farmer's stalls, the noise died down. His voice rang clear. "I'm not here to fight against this community. I'm here to defend my right to live on my land. Here is proof that the fences and locked gates weren't about standards, but about a land grab scheme." He lifted the stack of emails and played the video of HOA staff secretly installing surveillance cameras at night. The crowd erupted, gasps and murmurs rippling like fire. Clara was there, her face composed but her eyes blazing. She strode forward, her voice cutting. "This is nothing but speculation. Mr. Morales is deceiving you all." Ethan locked eyes with her and shot back. "If it's deception, why won't you admit to the development plan openly? If it's about standards, why was I the only one locked out while other mismatched fences remain?" His words landed like a hammer. The crowd thundered with applause, shouting, "Leave him alone! Give him justice!" The scene exploded into chaos. Clara supporters shouted back, but families long harassed by the HOA finally stepped out of the shadows to stand with Ethan. Reporters caught every moment, and by morning, the front page carried the image of Ethan raising the documents high before the cheering crowd, captioned, "One man stands, a community awakens." That night, Harold showed up at the ranch with a couple of cold beers. Sitting on the porch, he chuckled. "You did it! People aren't afraid of Clara anymore. You've broken the wall of silence she built." Ethan said nothing, his gaze fixed on the open gate under the moonlight. Deep down, he knew this wasn't the end. Clara was far too proud to surrender, and with her power and reputation challenged in public, she would strike back harder than ever. But at least now, Ethan wasn't alone. The community stood with him, and the truth had begun to shine in the open. On a summer morning, the Pine Ridge County Courthouse was packed to the brim. Not only the residents of Silver Valley Estates, but townsfolk from Bozeman had crowded in to witness the showdown that had consumed the community for months. At the plaintiff's table, Clara Whitfield sat rigid, impeccably dressed, her eyes sharp and cold. She accused Ethan Morales of acquiring the gate parcel illegitimately, claiming the deal showed signs of manipulation and harmed the HOA's interests. Across from her, Ethan sat with his attorney, Thomas Greer, calm on the surface, though his hands gripped the file before him tightly. On a summer morning, the Pine Ridge County Courthouse was packed to the brim. Not only the residents of Silver Valley Estates, but townsfolk from Bozeman had crowded in to witness the showdown that had consumed the community for months. At the plaintiff's table, Clara Whitfield sat rigid, impeccably dressed, her eyes sharp and cold. She accused Ethan Morales of acquiring the gate parcel illegitimately, claiming the deal showed signs of manipulation and harmed the HOA's interests. Across from her, Ethan sat with his attorney, Thomas Greer, calm on the surface, though his hands gripped the file before him tightly. The trial began. Clara spoke with fiery conviction, insisting the HOA always acted for the common good and that no individual could be allowed to break the standards of the community. She emphasized the HOA's long-term authority over the roadway. But when Thomas rose, the atmosphere shifted. He placed before the judge a thick stack of documents, the deed, the county plat map, and a legally certified sales contract from the county office. His voice was steady, deliberate. Who controls the gate? That's not determined by claims, it's determined by the law. And the law says the rightful owner of this parcel and of the gate upon it is Mr. Ethan Morales. Then came the video Ethan had recorded at night, showing HOA staff secretly installing surveillance cameras around the gate. The room buzzed with murmurs. Next, Thomas presented the cache of emails Rachel Donovan had uncovered, messages in which Clara and her allies plotted to convert the ranch land into a luxury resort, forcing current owners to sell out. As each piece of evidence was revealed, Clara's face drained of color. She tried to dismiss it as mere internal discussion, but her voice trembled, stripped of its usual authority. The judge sat in silence, eyes grave as he looked from one side to the other. At last, he raised the gavel and brought it down, his voice resounding through the hushed courtroom. This court rules that the purchase of the parcel is lawful. The HOA has no authority over the gate. Mr. Ethan Morales is the legal owner and holds full rights to control access. Furthermore, the HOA shall bear all legal costs incurred. The gavel struck like thunder. From the gallery, Harold shot to his feet, giving Ethan a thumbs up. Rachel's eyes brimmed with tears, and many other residents erupted in applause. Clara sat frozen, her face rigid, while her allies lowered their heads in silence. Ethan walked out of the courthouse to cheers from the crowd. Reporters swarmed, but he offered only a few words. "I didn't fight just for myself. I fought for everyone who's ever been oppressed by unreasonable power. Justice isn't something handed down, it's a right we must hold on to." Those words ran in the papers the next day, hailed as a declaration for the entire community. That afternoon, Ethan returned to his ranch. The gate now stood wide open, his cattle meandering freely toward the stream glittering under the golden sun. He leaned against a wooden post, the Montana wind rushing past, his heart lighter than it had been in months. Harold appeared with 2 cold beers, pressing one into Ethan's hand with a grin. "So, how does victory taste?" Ethan took a sip, smiled, and replied, "It's more than victory. It's a reminder that when one person dares to stand tall, an entire community can stop bowing." As the sun dipped low and the prairie stretched endlessly into the horizon, the story of the steel gate came to a close. Yet the legacy it left behind was clear. No one can lock away your dream, unless you let them. Sometimes in life we face invisible walls built from power, selfishness, or unreasonable rules. But if we stay silent and accept them, they only tighten their grip on our freedom and our dreams. Every person has the right to stand up, to defend their truth and dignity. When one voice speaks with courage, it not only sets that person free, it inspires an entire community. Justice and freedom are never born from surrender, but from determination and unity. If you believe every dream deserves to be protected, share your thoughts in the comments below. Don't forget to hit like to show your support, share this message to spread the word, and subscribe so you won't miss the next inspiring story. You are the reason we keep going.